स्टडी IQ IAS, अब तैयारी हुई अफोर्डेबल।
Welcome to StudyIQ's initiative, the podcast. I am your host, Dipansh Murjani. So tighten your belts because it is time for the podcast of the day. In the last episode, we discussed reservation in detail. And in this podcast, we will discuss right to privacy. Whenever privacy is discussed, then two observations come to the surface. Number one, disclosure of information, and number two, encroaching upon someone's privacy. Sir, how can we understand privacy in simple words?
Privacy can be defined as the ability of any individual to be left alone and express themselves selectively without being observed and disturbed. In other words, privacy is an individual's right to seclusion or right to be free from public attention or any interference. In recent context, it is often associated with the information privacy, which stands for the right to have some control over how your personal information is collected and used. Right to privacy thus stand for a legal framework that provides individuals with a legal right to protect their or their data privacy.
Sir, in the present situation, especially on the digital front, information and data have become quite important. Privacy of data and information have been mandatory for a long time. So can you explain us the importance of right to privacy in our life and as well as Indian democracy?
Right to privacy is central to the protection of human dignity and forms the basis of any democratic society. Just imagine that you have no right to privacy and if you do not have any control over information, so it cannot form any society into a democratic one. It also supports and reinforces other rights such as freedom of expression, information, and association. The right to privacy also has implications for the freedom of opinion and expression, since any undue interference with an individual's privacy can both directly and indirectly limit the free development and exchange of ideas for that person.
Sir, from Indian point of view, what are the provisions which are present in our constitution for right to privacy?
In India, the right to privacy comes under Article 21, which is right to life and personal liberty, a fundamental right basically. In this right, no person shall be deprived of his life or personal liberty except according to the states or procedure established by law. Right to life enshrined in Article 21 therefore includes all those aspects of life which makes a man's life more meaningful and complete with worth living. India, also a signatory to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in 1948, which includes a provision on the protection of the privacy of individual under that declaration's Article 12. In this regard, India has also ratified the International Convention on Civil and Political Rights. Article 17 of this convention provides for the protection of privacy of the individual, and those states who are party to this convention have a positive obligation to adopt legislation and other measures to prohibit interference and attacks on the privacy of any individual.
Over a period of time, we have seen that provisions evolve. Those provisions which were added by our constitution makers at the time of drafting our constitution, with the passage of time, they evolve. Sir, we are eager to understand how right to privacy evolved in India.
The jurisprudence of right to privacy has evolved and developed through a series of judgments over several years, and culminating with the Puttaswamy judgment in 2017, which ultimately reaffirmed that it is very much a fundamental right. The issue was raised for the first time in the case of Kharak Singh versus State of UP and others in 1962, where the Supreme Court held that the UP police regulation unconstitutional on the grounds of violation of Article 21 of the Constitution. and court held that right to privacy is a part of the right to protection of life and personal liberty, which is Article 21, equating with privacy to personal liberty, but did not consider it as a fundamental right or constitutional right in this case. Secondly, in Govind versus Madhya Pradesh in 1975, the Supreme Court accepted that right to privacy is also deriving its essence from Article 19, 21, but did not consider it an absolute right. Further, in Srimati Menka Gandhi versus Union of India case, the courts ruled against interference with the personal liberty and privacy of individuals and held that right to privacy valid, setting that the position that the right to life and liberty under Article 21 includes right to privacy also. However, Justice K.S. Puttaswamy versus Union of India in 2017 remains to be a very landmark judgment regarding the issue of right to privacy. It declared as an integral component of Part 3 of Constitution, that means a fundamental right. Thus, the Supreme Court finally settled the principle declaring privacy as a fundamental right.
Sir, when it comes to providing or implementing the provisions of right to privacy, what are the roles that Indian legislature and executive play?
The executive and legislatures in India tried to introduce specific laws defining privacy and providing protection against the breach of privacy of individuals. These includes in 2009 a private member bill, the Privacy Bill 2011, the Data Privacy and Protection Bill in 2017 were few examples where legislators tried to initiate some laws. Till then, in the absence of specific law on privacy, this right was legally waived under the Information Technology Act IT Act 2000. However, following the Justice K.S. Puttaswamy versus Union of India 2017 judgment, the issues regarding the regulation of information privacy in the digital age, a committee headed by Justice B.N. Srikrishnan was appointed to study the key issues and suggest some recommendations regarding it. We will try to understand some recommendations. The committee submitted its report in 2018 with the title A Free and Fair Digital Economy, Protecting Privacy and Empowering Indians, along with a draft Data Protection Bill to the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology was also submitted. Few recommendations we will look at. First, processing of personal data only for clear and specific lawful purposes is only when necessary, then only data can be collected. The second, right to be forgotten. Right to be forgotten. This means that if any individual wants to erase its own data, he have a right to erase that data. The third recommendation is data localization. Whereas data localization is about storing critical as well as non-critical data within the territorial boundaries of the country. The most important aspect of data localization is having control over our own data. The recommendations also provided to setting up of a data protection authority. And it also said that amendments in RTI and Aadhaar Act can be reintroduced. The further next step to the B.N. Srikrishnan Committee's recommendation was formulated in the Personal Data Protection Bill in 2019, and it was introduced then. However, it was soon sent to a joint parliamentary committee for scrutiny. It also showed several variations as compared to the draft bill suggested by Srikrishna Committee. Recently, the government has written the bill and proposed to introduce it with a few amendments to address various concerns which are raised by multiple stakeholders, and they want to make it more people and digital business friendly.
Sir, we are celebrating Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav. That means we have become 75 years old. However, in the present digital age, privacy comes with certain challenges as well. So according to you, how our country deals with those challenges, and Are there any reasonable restrictions in right to privacy?
In 2011, in February, Government of India released the Information Technology Intermediary Guidelines and Digital Media Ethics Code. The guidelines sought to place regulations on two different classes within the digital ecosystem. First class would be the regulation of social media and other intermediaries, and the second segregation was to regulation of OTT platforms and digital media news. Now let's talk about privacy in digital age. To date, the Indian digital privacy regime is largely focused on obtaining a data subject's prior consent. That means a user's consent, and ensuring data security measures are in place. Some of those instruments include IT Act 2000 and the guidelines which we have discussed just now. However, there is no independent data protector or regulator in India. Data subjects have limited rights, and there is almost no history of judicial enforcement for data privacy rights. However, India has a long way to go in ensuring data privacy in India. Now we will look at some restrictions which are put to right to privacy in India. First, this right should not harm the sovereignty and integrity of India. This right should not harm the security of state.
Sir, we have been trying to understand for quite a bit now. Right to privacy is an important provision for any democracy. So when some reasonable restrictions are levied upon Indian citizens, a debate starts between right to privacy and right to information. What is your take on this debate?
Many a time the government at different level resort to the arbitrary actions that may be violating the privacy of individuals. The grounds used are the reasonable restrictions that may have been deliberately interpreted by the ruling party for further its interest. Thus, the permissible restrictions that are put in place are often debated so that the privacy of individual does not get affected. However, the judiciary has tried to resolve them through the interpretation of various provisions and judgments. The most important debate is that right to privacy versus right to information. There is a clash of those two fundamental rights, and appellant's right to privacy as a part of the right to life. However, another person's right to information which could advance the public morality or public interest. The debate around the disclosure of information encroaching upon someone's privacy has often impeded the law-making authorities from drafting a well-balanced law on privacy. And as an aspirant, we need to understand that we have to give way forward for any issue. Right to privacy is a sensitive issue in India. It thus needs to be dealt with immense care by the executive and legislative bodies, keeping in mind that the interest of all the stakeholders should serve. Harmonizing the legal framework which regulates communication surveillance in India, establishing an independent and effective oversight mechanism with a mandate to monitor all stages of interceptions of communication, and establishing independent accountability where any regulator should be there, where the holistic law making and legislation to protect privacy should put forward. This should be our next step after the B.N. Sri Krishnan Committee's recommendations.
Sir, thank you for giving us the valuable information. Dear listeners, we will call it quits for this episode. In the next episode of the podcast, we will discuss another important topic. Till then, keep studying and stay connected with StudyIQ. You can listen to StudyIQ Presents the podcast on various audio streaming platforms such as Google Podcast, Kuku FM, Spotify, Hubhopper, Apple Podcast, etc. All the links are pinned in the comment section below. Thank you.